Hello everyone, back tuning into today's video. You're going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days for today's video, which should take us to around the 28th of March, and we'll also extend out beyond that with the extended GFS ensembles and also the ECM ensembles as well. So that can take us around a couple of weeks, which gets us into the beginning of March. Have a look at CFS V2 for the next month also, so we'll see what's going on for the rest of March into the beginning of April. Now I've got to say a big thank you to our latest patron. We are now up to 61 patrons for Gazworthy. So totally unbelievable number of patrons for Gazworthy. When we started this in June last year, I never expected that by now we'd be over 60 patrons. But we are, so big thank you to our 61st patron, and our 61st patron is Henrik Anderson. So big thank you to Henrik Anderson for becoming Gazworthy's 61st patron. Now, if you'd like to become a patron for Gazworthy, so you need to come to Gazworthy's Patreon page, sign up for a Patreon account, and then you can pledge an ongoing monthly donation. Be anything from $1 a month upwards. It doesn't have to be a large amount of money at all. You just pledge an ongoing monthly donation from $1 a month upwards to Gazworthy. By doing that, you will join in with the rest of the patrons, and the number will gradually go up, and you'll become an official and formal patron for Gazworthy. We'll give you a shout out in video to say thank you very much for doing that. So a big thank you to all of Gazworthy's patrons. It really is something very kind, very special that you are doing for Gazworthy's. Alternatively, if you just prefer to give a one-off donation, then you can do that through PayPal. So you just come to the Gazworthy's PayPal page, you sign into your PayPal account. Most people have got one of those these days. I mean, you can pledge an ongoing, you can pledge a one-off donation to Gazworthy's, and by doing that, you become a donor for Gazworthy. Again, you'll get a shout out in the videos. We'll say thank you very much for doing that, and you'll get a mention as long as you want. If you'd rather not have a mention, that's fine. Just leave a little note with your donation to tell us so, and we'll just say thanks to this anonymous person. But otherwise, you get a mention in the videos. You might want to mention for your website or for your business, so we're happy to do that as well. We'll even go to your website page, and we'll leave a link in the description at YouTube to your website or business. So it's however you want it, really, but the upshot is you are helping us to pay for the website, Gazworthy's, and helping us to keep content online. So a huge thank you to all of our patrons, a huge thank you to all of our donors as well. Special thank you to Henrik Anderson for becoming Gazworthy's 61st patron. Big thank you to you. Right, let's get on with the video. We're going to start off by having a look at the 500 millibar height anomaly flowcharts from Penn State University. We've got the ECMWF here on the top and the GFS on the bottom. We'll have a look at that in a moment. 500 millibars is 80,000 feet, is an area in the atmosphere. High pressure, low pressure are being moved around by the jet stream running above. Red extrapolates high pressure, blue to low pressure. These are the mean flow charts for the next week to 10 days, which is going to take us more or less towards the end of March. So we find that with the ECMWF, we've got an area of above average height centered over and to the south of the country. We've got below average heights out to the north and northwest, and also to our northeast. The jet stream coming across the Atlantic like that, and then rising northwards before plunging southwards into northeastern parts of Europe. So it looks quite a cold pattern, that, for Scandinavia and northeastern parts of Europe. But for us, the closest ridge of high pressure will still be pulling in relatively mild air from off the Atlantic. The GFS is very similar, but with this one, the high pressure is more centred over the country, so actually it's even more settled with this. You've got high pressure through the UK, but also pushing northwards as well. Low pressure is out in the middle of the North Atlantic and over to our northeast. That's how the flow and the jet is looking. So again, we're under a ridge of high pressure, more so with the GFS compared to the ECM. There's a lot of dry, settled and fine weather to be enjoyed with that one as we go through towards the end of March. High pressure well and truly in control. These are how the GFS upper air temperature and precipitation ensembles are looking. Today we're looking at Bridlington. So this is the latest suggested location for our list of the suggested location for this part of the video. Please submit your locations that you'd like to see within videos over the next few days. We can't go down to village level, but we can show you local town or city if you would like to do that. So the red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average for Bridlington. We're basically above average through to month's end now, really. So that's where we're starting off at, just there, close to average. But you see, through the week, the temperature is going to be lifting up. But do drop down a little bit over the weekend. It goes a little bit cooler over the weekend, but only temporarily. Remember, temperatures next week are lifting up once again. What I would say about this, though, is that there is quite a lot of scatter now within the GFS ensemble. So most of these ensemble members are keeping the upper air temperatures quite mild as we go through to the end of March into beginning of April, just there. But there are several, I'm sure you've noticed, but there are several that are going cold, actually really very cold for the time of year. These ones down here are going down to around -10 at 850 HPA. Now, they are outliers. They're not all that well supported, but there's a few of them. So maybe they're not really outliers, because there's probably too many of them to be outliers. So they're just like at the coldest end of the cluster. But the coldest end of the cluster is actually really very cold, and usually cold for the time of the year. So I would think it's a very low risk possibility. But there is a possibility as we get through to the very end of March and beginning of April, but it could go very cold. I wouldn't expect that to happen. Most of these ensemble members are up here, but I don't think we can totally rule out the chances. We're seeing quite a few members of the GFS ensembles that are going down to between -5 and -10, which is very cold for the beginning of April. There's just a possibility that we could be in for a bit of a shock. But I don't think that's the way it's going to go. But while there's so many of those GFS ensemble members, albeit a minority option, but while there's several of them there, I think we just have to keep a close eye on it, because obviously we're into growing season now. Going to be a lot of fruit blossom coming out and etc. So any sort of shock in early April going down to -10 at 850 HPA, which is unusually cold for April. If that was to happen, then it would be a little bit disruptive for growers. So just a low risk, but we need to keep an eye on it. As far as precipitation is concerned, lots of dry weather coming up over the next week to 10 days, really. Little cluster of precipitation there some point over the weekend associated with this slight dip in the temperature at the weekend, and then it goes pretty dry again after that through the early part of next week. In the more extended range, moving up to the start of April, there are a few more precipitation spikes starting to appear, so possibly just signs of something happening for early April, whether it goes cold and unsettled or whether it just turns more unsettled but stays mild. But I think there's a few options on the table now for early April that we'll obviously be talking more about as we get closer to that time frame. Temperature anomalies from the 18th to the 26th of March coming out above average, so it can be a mild week coming up. Spring is returning after all of the wet and windy weather that we've had over the past 2 or 3 weeks, although temperatures have held up quite well, but it's been really unsettled in the past 2 or 3 weeks. And precipitation anomalies are drier than average in most parts of the country. A little bit above average with precipitation for Western Scotland, but otherwise most places are coming out drier than average, particularly so for England and Wales. That's how the latest GFS run is looking for Thursday. So we've got high pressure to our south on Thursday, low pressure up to the north. We're bringing in this mild, balmy southwesterly wind. The high pressure through the course of the weekend gradually weakens a little bit. So that's that slight interruption, something a bit cooler, a bit more unsettled happening on Saturday as the weather front moves in from the Atlantic. That's probably going to weaken as it moves across the country. So any rain on it will become very light and patchy, but it probably lowers the temperature a little bit over the weekend. But by the start of next week, we're back under a big ridge of high pressure once again. And that high pressure then stays with us as we move up towards day 10. Now, you'll notice that around the back of this high pressure, on the back side of the high, we are bringing down very cold air from the north into eastern and northeastern parts of Europe with this trough of low pressure. So I would assume those colder GFS ensemble members are bringing that cold in around the back of the high pressure. I think they would either be taking the high pressure up to Scandinavia as we get through towards the end of March. They'd be setting up a Scandinavian high and turning wind into the east, or possibly they would be moving the high pressure out to the northwest and pulling down a northerly wind, so kind of like backing this trough that's across northeastern parts of Europe westwards. So that's a possibility for the end of March, but the more likely scenario is just that we stay under this ridge of high pressure and keep it dry and relatively mild. And that's what this GFS run is doing, actually. So this is how things are looking at day 10, Thursday, 28th of March. We're under this ridge of high pressure and we're pulling in these east to southeasterly winds. And then as we go beyond that into more extended range, we just keep this high pressure going across the country, never pull in any cold winds either from the east or from the north. That's how we finish up on Wednesday, the 3rd of April. So we're a long way out now, 384 hours away, but we've taken that high pressure into the Atlantic. We're starting to pull down some slightly cool and showery winds from the north, perhaps. The parallel GFS run, again, looks very mild at the end of this week, a little bit more unsettled for time over the weekend. And then we've sort of got this high pressure just sitting over and slightly to the west of us. Again, there's those cold northerly winds plunging down through Scandinavia, just on the periphery of that, not really pulling anything particularly cold in from the north or the northeast. But we are quite close to quite a cold plunge that's moving through Scandinavia and into eastern and northeastern parts of Europe. It's having a go as we move up towards day 10 of getting the high pressure up towards Scandinavia. It doesn't pull it off, but you can see the route to those cold GFS members. You can see how they would happen with Scandinavian high setting up here and a pool of cold air sitting underneath that across eastern parts of Europe. So any easterly wind is going to start to push that into the west of Europe. What happens with the parallel GFS run is actually but the Atlantic breaks through, so we don't get anything cold coming in from the north or from the east, but it does turn a lot more unsettled as we move into the beginning of April. That's how we finish up with parallel GFS run. Low pressure is to our north, high pressure's out to west. So possibly, if we could run on another day or two, that will start to pull down some colder winds from the north. There are a few hints here of a bit of a pattern change, I have to say, for the beginning of April. ECMWF, again, we've got high pressure to the south, low pressure to the north on Thursday. So all looking very mild through to the end of this week. A little bit more unsettled and slightly cooler over the weekend with winds swinging in to the north. And then early next week we've got this ridge again to our south. Low pressure is out to the north and west. Always more unsettled in the north and west. Driest and mildest conditions next week, always in the south. That's how we look as we get towards day 10. Again, it is having a go at building up a bit of a ridge over Scandinavia. There it is. High pressure is beginning to develop over Scandinavia. It looks like for us we're basically keeping a westerly flow coming, but we do need to keep a close eye on what's happening here as we get through to the end of March. There is quite a cold pool that's sitting over Scandinavia, so any east or northeast wind does have a pool of cold air to tap into, and obviously if we was to pull in some unusually cold air for the very end of March or the beginning of April, because we're so late into the year, we're well into spring, that could be a little bit concerning for growers and for farmers. So just need to keep a close eye on what's happening there. Right, this is how the ECM ensembles are looking at day 10, which is the 28th of March, 240 hours away. These are the options that are within the ECM ensembles today from the Icelandic Met Office. So we've got 12 members of the ECM ensembles with high pressure sitting over and slightly to our northeast. That's pulling in bit of an easterly wind, so mainly dry but possibly rather chilly with those ones. Then we've got 12 that have high pressure kind of like to our east and southeast with low pressure out to the northwest. So these ones are trying to bring the Atlantic back, maybe a bit more unsettled than northern and western parts of the country. There's 11 members of the ECM ensembles, including the ECM control run, that have high pressure or above average heights just over slightly to our east. So they look mainly dry and quite mild. They'll be bringing up southerly winds. There's another 9 that have high pressure more or less sitting over top of the country, so they're just very dry and settled. And then there's 7, including the operational run, which is the run we're just looking at, that have high pressure sort of declining a little bit to the east and southeast, and low pressure trying to get back in from off the Atlantic. So that scenario that we saw within the ECM ensembles at day 10, this one, not all that well supported actually by the ECM ensembles today. And then in 2 weeks' time, these are the options that we've got for 360 hours, the 2nd of April. So we've got 18 members of the ECM ensembles that have high pressure centred over top of the UK, and they've got low pressure up to the north. They're bringing in a westerly just to the north of us. Then we've got 17 that are unsettled with low pressure and the Atlantic westerlies breaking through. So they're really introducing the Atlantic as the high pressure slips away to the south. And then we've got 16 that have a trough of low pressure centred almost over top of the country. So those are also unsettled. So actually as we get through to the beginning of April, we've got 18 members of the ECM ensembles that are mainly anticyclonic, dry and settled, but we've got 17 and 16, so a majority, that are actually turning things more unsettled as we get through to the beginning of April. So just a few hints here that early April could start to see some sort of pattern change. Finally, this is how the CFS is looking today for the next month. These are 500 millibar heights broken down to week periods. The first week period will take us from the 18th to the 24th of March. The coming week has above average heights centred from the Atlantic into the UK, with below average heights up to the north. Jet streams to our north as well, so you're going to have a lot of dry weather, and it's going to be quite spring-like in the week ahead. And this goes on into week 2 as well. This is the 25th of March through to the final day of the month, 31st, with high pressure again centred over and ever so slightly to our east. Low pressure's out to the northwest. The jet stream is up there. So again, lots of dry and pretty mild weather with that. Week 3 also looks very anticyclonic. This is the 1st to the 7th of April. No sign of the pattern change here, really, with above average heights again centred to our east and northeast, but also ridging through the Atlantic. So lots and lots of high pressure. Low pressure is up around Greenland and Iceland. The jet stream's going off up there. So that will keep things pretty dry and settled through to early April. And then week 4, it just goes on actually. This is the 8th to the 14th of April, with high pressure again centred to our northeast, also out to our west. It is a little bit more unsettled to our south. That low pressure across Spain and Portugal possibly trying to bring more unsettled conditions into the UK, but it would still be very mild, if not quite warm, with winds coming up from a southerly direction. Temperature anomalies from the 18th, 24th of March, much milder than average. Week 2 temperature anomalies also significantly above average, so no sign of anything cold there. And this goes on into week 3 as well. This is the 1st to the 7th of April. The CFS is not seeing any sort of winter shock here. It's just keeping above average temperature anomalies going through to the middle of April. This is week 4, the 8th to the 14th of April, again looking much milder than average. And finally, precipitation wise, the coming week, the 18th, 24th of March, is much drier than average. Week 2, precipitation anomalies again coming out drier than average. Week 3, precipitation anomalies close to average from the 1st to the 7th of March. And then week 4, as we're weakening the signal, we're losing the signal. This is the 8th to the 14th of March. Again, it's very close to average. The CFS is not seeing any signs of a cold shock for the end of March and the beginning of April. That doesn't mean to say that we won't have a cold shock. There is within the GFS ensembles the possibility that that could happen. But again, it looks like it's not well supported. It's a minority option. So I would have thought it's unlikely, but we need to just keep an eye on it. The more likely scenario, I think, for early April is probably just that it turns more unsettled and we begin to bring low pressure back in as a high pressure weakens again. So I would go for a more unsettled start to April, perhaps, with a low grade possibility of something a lot more dramatic happening and it turning quite cold, but that's not where I'm expecting things to go, but we need to keep an eye on it. Right, that's your week 10-day video update for today. Tomorrow, we haven't got the ECM month-ahead forecast for UK and Europe. That's being rested for 1 week. I've got a busy day coming up tomorrow. So just be a week to 10-day video update tomorrow afternoon. And then the ECM 30-day update will be back a week tomorrow. So come back for tomorrow's video. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.